The CIA's former chief of disguise once created a mask so realistic that the wearer fooled his own wife. When she saw him at a party, she had a full conversation without realizing it was her husband in disguise. Hollywood portrays spies transforming in seconds. But what does effective disguise actually require? Is it more like a magic trick or meticulous craftsmanship? In this video, I'll pull back the curtain on authentic disguise techniques used by real operatives in the field. You'll discover why the quick change artistry in movies misrepresents the careful, methodical process that intelligence officers employ, and how the true art of disguise works in high-stakes situations. The Hollywood transformation myth. Let's start with what you've seen in movies. A spy walks into a bathroom stall, looking like themselves, and emerges seconds later as someone completely different. Take that iconic scene from Mission Impossible 2, where Ethan Hunt peels off an entire face to reveal himself underneath. Or the moment in Alias, when Sidney Bristow pulls off a hyper-realistic mask, complete with voice-changing technology. These Hollywood transformations have become such a staple that we barely question them anymore. In these cinematic portrayals, agents apply perfect facial prosthetics in minutes, often in cramped spaces like airplane bathrooms. The masks move flawlessly, with expressions never peeling at the edges or looking unnatural under any lighting. In spy films, characters receive gadgets that alter appearance instantly, from subtle facial adjustments to complete identity changes that fool even biometric scanners. Hollywood transformations share common elements. The process takes less than a minute of screen time. Materials are impossibly thin, yet perfectly opaque, and disguises work under all conditions. The scenes follow a predictable pattern. An agent grabs a small kit, applies something with quick movements. The camera cuts away and returns to show a complete transformation. Sometimes we get the dramatic mask peel, where the entire face comes off in one piece. This cinematic shorthand suggests disguise is simple with the right tools. Reality, however, operates more like a detailed painting than a magic trick. According to declassified CIA documentation, even basic disguise preparation during the Cold War required hours of work and multiple specialists. The Office of Technical Service (OTS), the CIA's real-life equivalent of Q Branch, had entire teams dedicated to creating convincing disguises, and none involved magical peel-off masks. Consider Moscow operations during the height of the Cold War. CIA officers underwent extensive disguise preparation that could take an entire day. The process involved careful application of prosthetics, hairpieces, clothing modification, and extensive practice before an agent ever entered the field. These transformations required patience, multiple specialists, and meticulous attention to detail. The magic mask trope represents Hollywood's most significant distortion. In films, masks completely conceal features while moving perfectly with facial expressions. Professional mask makers who've worked in both Hollywood and for security agencies explain that physical limitations make such masks impossible. Real facial prosthetics have to contend with the movement of facial muscles, perspiration, and environmental factors, explains one former disguise specialist. A mask thin enough to be undetectable would lack the structural integrity to maintain its shape, and one sturdy enough to maintain its shape would be noticeable, especially around flexible areas like the mouth and eyes. Films also misrepresent what disguises accomplish. They change not just appearance but voice, mannerisms, and even biometric identifiers. In reality, no physical disguise can alter fingerprints or retinal patterns. These unique biological markers serve as security precisely because they can't be faked. Material limitations present another challenge. Hollywood ignores prosthetics that look realistic under varied lighting, require careful color matching and application. They're affected by temperature, humidity, and the wearer's skin oils. A disguise might quickly deteriorate under field conditions, something real intelligence officers factored into planning. The gap extends to behavioral aspects too. In films, disguised agents automatically know how to act like someone else. In reality, behavioral adaptation was considered as important as physical disguise. CIA training devoted significant time to teaching officers how to modify behavior to match their new appearance. Real CIA disguise experts prioritize changing key identifying features rather than complete transformations. The goal wasn't to look like someone specific, but to be unmemorable or blend into a particular environment. The best disguise isn't one that makes people think you're someone else, noted one former intelligence officer. It's one that makes people not remember you at all. CIA techniques emphasized practical, reliable methods, focusing on features people actually notice: hair color and style, distinctive eyebrows, glasses, clothing style, apparent age, and weight. These changes didn't need perfection. They just needed to work long enough for an operation to succeed. Real disguises were designed for specific, limited purposes: a brief surveillance run, a single meeting, or entering and exiting a building unrecognized. Unlike movie spies maintaining false identities indefinitely, real officers often use disguises for discrete activities, then abandon them. Technology limitations represent another departure from Hollywood. Instant voice changers don't exist in the forms portrayed. While voice modification technology exists, it doesn't work with seamless perfection. The same applies to contact lenses that completely change eye color, instant hair dye, or facial modifications applied in minutes. The preparation reality differs starkly too. Disguise specialists would study photographs, conduct surveillance, and gather intelligence before creating a disguise package. They considered the specific operational environment, lighting conditions, duration of exposure, distance from observers, and local clothing styles. Real CIA disguises rarely involved full-face masks. They more commonly used partial prosthetics, a changed nose or altered cheekbones, combined with changes to hair, clothing, and accessories. These techniques required less maintenance during operations and were less likely to catastrophically fail. The reality of CIA disguise operations might seem less exciting than Hollywood portrayals, but in many ways it's more impressive. Real disguise specialists accomplish their goals despite material limitations, technological constraints, and the complex psychology of human perception. They relied on creativity, psychological insight, and painstaking attention to detail. The spectacular failure: when real disguises go wrong, those painstaking details that disguise experts obsess over aren't just professional thoroughness. They're survival mechanisms born from painful lessons. When a disguise fails in the field, there's no second take, no director yelling cut. The consequences can range from mission compromise to something far worse. Intelligence agencies meticulously dissect their failures because that's where the most valuable lessons are found. In the high-stakes world of espionage, failure analysis drives innovation. Every compromised operation becomes a case study. Every discovered agent, a lesson in what not to do. When everything goes perfectly, little is learned. But when something falls apart at the worst possible moment, that's when the real education happens. The physical challenges of maintaining a disguise are numerous. Under stress, an agent might sweat, causing adhesives to loosen or makeup to run. Environmental factors compound these issues. A disguise created for temperate conditions might fail in extreme heat or humidity. Materials behave differently. Adhesives react unexpectedly, and suddenly, that perfectly applied prosthetic starts to shift or detach. Real-world operators must consider local climate, lighting conditions, and cultural norms when preparing their cover. The fascinating aspect of real-world disguise failures is that they rarely happen because of obvious mistakes. It's almost never the dramatic mask falling off moment Hollywood loves. Instead, it's the subtle details, a behavioral inconsistency, a nervous habit, or environmental factors that couldn't be anticipated. A disguise that worked perfectly in controlled conditions can suddenly become compromised when facing the unpredictable variables of field operations. Intelligence agencies have learned that the most dangerous moment for an agent isn't necessarily during the main operation, but during seemingly innocent transitions, entering a secure building, passing through checkpoints, or interacting with security personnel. These interactions create stress peaks that can trigger tells and compromise otherwise solid covers. The evolution of disguise techniques reads like a history of learning from catastrophic mistakes. Each failure forces a re-evaluation and adaptation. When facial prosthetics proved unreliable in humid conditions, agencies developed new adhesives and application techniques. When wigs were identified as vulnerability points, they improved anchoring systems and material quality. The 1979 Canadian caper illustrates this principle powerfully. During the Iran hostage crisis, 6 American diplomats needed to escape Tehran without being identified as Americans. The solution was disguising them as a Canadian film crew. The physical elements were relatively straightforward: Canadian passports, appropriate clothing, and convincing pocket litter, such as Canadian restaurant receipts and key rings with names of Canadian beer brands. But the most revealing pattern in disguise failures isn't about the physical disguise at all. It's about behavior. Compromised operations reveal a fundamental truth. Physical appearance matters far less than how you act while wearing that disguise. This attention to detail was impressive, but the operation nearly unraveled because of behavioral factors. The Americans had to adopt Canadian mannerisms to sell their cover story. Every interaction with Iranian officials became a high-stakes performance, where the smallest behavioral inconsistencies could trigger suspicion. The pressure was immense, knowing that a single slip in accent, a moment of confusion when responding to a cover name, or an unconscious American gesture could blow the entire operation. This wasn't about the quality of passports or the convincingness of their wardrobes. It was about whether they could inhabit these identities completely. The Canadian caper succeeded, but it reinforced what intelligence agencies had been learning for decades. Behavior trumps appearance. You can have the most convincing physical disguise, but if your behavior doesn't match, you'll attract attention. The human brain is remarkably adept at detecting inconsistencies, even when people can't consciously articulate what feels off about someone. The spectacular failure, when real disguises go wrong, those painstaking details that disguise experts obsess over, aren't just professional thoroughness. They're survival mechanisms born from painful lessons. When a disguise fails in the field, there's no second take, no director yelling cut. The consequences can range from mission compromise to something far worse. Intelligence agencies meticulously dissect their failures because that's where the most valuable lessons are found. In the high-stakes world of espionage, failure analysis drives innovation. Every compromised operation becomes a case study. Every discovered agent, a lesson in what not to do. When everything goes perfectly, little is learned. But when something falls apart at the worst possible moment, that's when the real education happens. The fascinating aspect of real-world disguise failures is that they rarely happen because of obvious mistakes. It's almost never the dramatic mask falling off moment Hollywood loves. Instead, it's the subtle details, a behavioral inconsistency, a nervous habit, or environmental factors that couldn't be anticipated. A disguise that worked perfectly in controlled conditions can suddenly become compromised when facing the unpredictable variables of field operations. The physical challenges of maintaining a disguise are numerous. Under stress, an agent might sweat, causing adhesives to loosen or makeup to run. Environmental factors compound these issues. A disguise created for temperate conditions might fail in extreme heat or humidity. Materials behave differently. Adhesives react unexpectedly, and suddenly, that perfectly applied prosthetic starts to shift or detach. Real-world operators must consider local climate, lighting conditions, and cultural norms when preparing their cover. Intelligence agencies have learned that the most dangerous moment for an agent isn't necessarily during the main operation, but during seemingly innocent transitions, entering a secure building, passing through checkpoints, or interacting with security personnel. These interactions create stress peaks that can trigger tells and compromise otherwise solid covers. The evolution of disguise techniques reads like a history of learning from catastrophic mistakes. Each failure forces a re-evaluation and adaptation. When facial prosthetics proved unreliable in humid conditions, agencies developed new adhesives and application techniques. When wigs were identified as vulnerability points, they improved anchoring systems and material quality. But the most revealing pattern in disguise failures isn't about the physical disguise at all. It's about behavior. Compromised operations reveal a fundamental truth. Physical appearance matters far less than how you act while wearing that disguise. The 1979 Canadian caper illustrates this principle powerfully. During the Iran hostage crisis, 6 American diplomats needed to escape Tehran without being identified as Americans. The solution was disguising them as a Canadian film crew. The physical elements were relatively straightforward: Canadian passports, appropriate clothing, and convincing pocket litter, such as Canadian restaurant receipts and key rings with names of Canadian beer brands. This attention to detail was impressive, but the operation nearly unraveled because of behavioral factors. The Americans had to adopt Canadian mannerisms to sell their cover story. Every interaction with Iranian officials became a high-stakes performance, where the smallest behavioral inconsistencies could trigger suspicion. The pressure was immense, knowing that a single slip in accent, a moment of confusion when responding to a cover name, or an unconscious American gesture could blow the entire operation. This wasn't about the quality of passports or the convincingness of their wardrobes. It was about whether they could inhabit these identities completely. The Canadian caper succeeded, but it reinforced what intelligence agencies had been learning for decades. Behavior trumps appearance. You can have the most convincing physical disguise, but if your behavior doesn't match, you'll attract attention. The human brain is remarkably adept at detecting inconsistencies, even when people can't consciously articulate what feels off about someone. Intelligence agencies have institutionalized this learning. Training evolved to place as much emphasis on behavioral adaptation as on physical transformation. Agents spend far more time learning to inhabit their cover identities psychologically than they do sitting in makeup chairs. They practice maintaining their cover under stress, responding naturally to their cover names, and internalizing appropriate mannerisms. This behavioral component explains why intelligence agencies often prefer minimal physical disguises. The more dramatic the transformation, the harder it is to behave naturally. An agent constantly aware of facial prosthetics will exhibit subtle tells that trained observers can detect. A simpler disguise, allowing natural movement, often proves more effective in the field. Sophisticated counterintelligence operations exploit this reality by creating situations designed to induce stress. Knowing these emotional states make it harder to maintain behavioral consistency. A sudden change in security procedure or an unexpected question can increase pressure on someone maintaining a false identity. Agencies have developed specific protocols to help agents maintain behavioral consistency under stress, including psychological preparation techniques and methods for managing physiological responses. Agents learn to control their breathing, practice responses to unexpected scenarios, and develop mental anchors to stay grounded in their cover identity even when surprised. The physical components of disguise haven't been abandoned. They've been refined to support behavioral authenticity. Modern disguise specialists create transformations that work with an agent's natural movements rather than against them, prioritizing comfort over dramatic effect. Perhaps the most valuable lesson from analyzing disguise failures is the importance of appropriate scale. Intelligence agencies rarely attempt the dramatic, total identity transformations that Hollywood loves. Instead, they focus on specific strategic changes that accomplish mission objectives without unnecessary risks. sometimes just enough to avoid recognition by specific individuals, other times blending into a social context rather than becoming someone else agencies
entirely.
These hard-won lessons from field failures have shaped modern disguise methodology into a discipline that balances art and science. Those psychology and technology, where spies transform completely in seconds with a quick change routine. In the real world of espionage, time works very differently, and the constraints it places on field operatives have driven some of the CIA's most innovative disguise techniques. Let's talk about something called the Moscow rules. These were survival mantras for CIA operatives working in the Soviet Union during the Cold War. The first rule? Assume everything has gone wrong. The second? Never go against your gut. And perhaps most importantly, take your time. This emphasis on meticulous preparation directly contradicted Hollywood's portrayal of instant transformations. During this era, disguise teams would dedicate weeks to preparing materials for a single operation, where Hollywood shows a spy changing identity as quickly as changing lanes in traffic. Real intelligence work resembles a master chef preparing a complex dish, methodical, precise, and impossible to rush. Why such an extensive timeline? Because the stakes were extraordinarily high. CIA officers operating in Moscow faced constant surveillance from the KGB, and a single slip would mean capture, imprisonment, or worse. The agency responded to this pressure by investing more time in preparation, not less. The process was exhaustively thorough. Disguise teams analyzed everything about the operational environment, from seasonal fashion trends in Moscow to specific textiles and manufacturing styles that would pass local scrutiny. They sourced authentic local clothing items, sometimes through elaborate procurement networks. All of this happened before an agent even began the physical transformation process. This preparation phase reveals a fundamental truth about real-world disguise work. The most time-consuming part happens long before anyone puts on a wig or applies makeup. By the time an operation received approval, disguise specialists had already invested dozens or even hundreds of hours in background work, creating a disguise infrastructure to support the mission. But what about the actual transformation itself? Even with all materials prepared in advance, applying a comprehensive disguise package during the Cold War typically required several hours of careful work. Facial prosthetics needed proper fitting, coloring, and blending. Wigs required appropriate styling for the cover identity. Clothing needed adjustments to alter apparent body shape or size. This meticulous process created disguises that could withstand close inspection, but required significant preparation time. Field operations, however, rarely afford the luxury of spending hours in a safe house with a full disguise team. This reality created a pressing operational need. How could agents make meaningful appearance changes quickly when circumstances demanded it? The answer came through ready-to-wear elements, pre-prepared disguise components that agents could quickly incorporate without extensive setup time. These were modular building blocks of deception that could be combined in different ways depending on the situation. John Mendez, former CIA chief of disguise, offered practical advice revealing this approach. Buy local clothing and footwear when you're abroad. Try horn-rimmed glasses and a new hairstyle to change your face. This guidance emphasizes rapid, practical changes implementable in minutes rather than hours, focusing on elements that meaningfully alter perception without elaborate preparation. These ready-to-wear techniques served survival purposes. When an agent needed to change appearance quickly to evade surveillance or respond to an unexpected threat, they relied on these rapid disguise methods. A hat pulled low, glasses, a change of jacket, an altered posture could create enough difference to break surveillance or avoid recognition. For emergency situations, the agency developed even more innovative rapid change techniques. One remarkable example was the 5-second mask, a quick application disguise element, deployable almost instantly while still allowing natural facial animation. These were designed with specific, limited purposes, not to create a perfect new identity, but to create just enough change to escape immediate recognition. The reality of disguise timelines in intelligence work ultimately balanced effectiveness against practicality. The most comprehensive disguises, those withstanding extended close contact or thorough scrutiny, required substantial preparation, but many operations simply didn't need that level of disguise. They needed targeted, specific changes, implementable and reversible quickly. This led to a tiered approach to disguise work within intelligence agencies. Full transformations, changing nearly every visible aspect of a person, might take 4 to 6 hours to apply, even with all materials prepared in advance. These were reserved for the most sensitive operations where an agent would face extended observation. Mid-level disguises, changing hair, adding subtle facial features, and altering apparent age or weight, could typically be accomplished in 1-2 hours, providing substantial protection without extensive preparation time. Quick change disguises, for field implementation, were designed for application in 15-30 minutes or less, focusing on immediately noticeable features and relying heavily on accessories, clothing changes, and behavioral adjustments. Emergency disguises. The true quick change techniques could be implemented in under 5 minutes, breaking the pattern of recognition just enough to escape immediate threat. This tiered approach reveals the practical wisdom of intelligence agencies. They understood that disguise exists on a spectrum of effectiveness, balanced against practical constraints like time, comfort, and operational needs. Sometimes a simple pair of glasses and a hat proved more valuable than an elaborate facial prosthetic, precisely because it could be applied and removed in seconds rather than hours. The CIA's investment in rapid disguise techniques reveals something important about real-world espionage. Adaptation and improvisation often outweigh perfect preparation. While movie spies seem to have endless perfect disguises for any situation, real intelligence officers work with limited resources in unpredictable environments. Their disguise techniques emphasized flexibility, speed, and effectiveness of real disguise rather than intelligence agencies have discovered something surprising about human perception that makes elaborate disguises not just unnecessary, but potentially dangerous. The CIA's approach to physical disguise operates on a principle that contradicts everything we've learned from movies, that sometimes less deception is actually more effective. This concept is known as minimum effective disguise, and it's a cornerstone of real intelligence work. Rather than transforming agents into unrecognizable people, professionals aim for subtle alterations that prevent identification without drawing attention. The approach balances change carefully. Too little, and you might be recognized. Too much, and you appear suspicious or struggle to maintain the illusion. Consider how you recognize people in daily life. Is it their entire face or just a few standout features your brain remembers? Intelligence agencies discovered we tend to remember specific identifying markers rather than complete facial structures. This insight transformed how disguise experts approach their craft. The psychology is fascinating. When encountering someone, our brains create shortcuts, focusing on distinctive elements, thick eyebrows, a characteristic smile, or a distinctive nose. These become memory anchors that trigger recognition later. This explains why real agents rarely use the elaborate prosthetics seen in films. Instead, they modify key identifier features, creating a disconnection in the observer's recognition process. The brain searches for familiar memory anchors and, when unable to find them, often fails to make the connection, even when other aspects remain unchanged. What's remarkable is how effective minimal changes can be. Glasses alter the perceived shape of a face, like an artist's strategic brushstroke. A different hairstyle masks distinctive hairlines. Even simple posture adjustments can transform how we perceive someone's height and build. Former CIA Chief of Disguise Jonna Mendez shared a striking example during a high-stakes operation. Needing to quickly disguise a foreign asset without time for elaborate makeup, she simply sprinkled Dr. Scholl's foot powder through the asset's hair, creating instant gray. This small change altered a key identifier feature enough to make the operation successful. This approach solves a major problem with elaborate disguises. Sustainability. Complex prosthetics fail due to sweat or extended wear. Minimal changes remain comfortable, allowing agents to focus on behavior rather than worrying about their disguise failing. The effectiveness extends beyond practicality. People see what they expect to see. Change a few key identifiers while maintaining a natural appearance, and observers categorize you as someone else. Without further scrutiny, their brains decide you're not the person they might be looking for. Intelligence agencies leverage this cognitive quirk by teaching agents to direct attention strategically. Clothing choices can pull focus from the face. Distinctive accessories become the memory anchor instead of facial features, making the agent memorable for something controllable, while keeping identity features forgettable. Social class signifiers prove particularly powerful. Our brains instantly classify people based on perceived socioeconomic status through clothing quality and grooming. By shifting these signals, an agent appears to belong to an entirely different social sphere. Someone used to seeing you in business attire might walk past you in working class clothes without recognition. Age manipulation offers another subtle technique. Adding gray to hair, adjusting posture, or creating thin lines at key facial points adds perceived years without elaborate makeup. Similarly, apparent weight changes can be achieved through clothing and posture, rather than physical transformation. This approach aligns with the intelligence community's preference for plausible deception over dramatic transformation. Real operations rarely require agents to impersonate specific individuals. They simply need to avoid recognition while blending naturally into their environment. The gray man concept exemplifies this philosophy, becoming visually unremarkable rather than strikingly different. It's about manipulating perception, just enough to slip through cognitive filters without triggering scrutiny, requiring deep understanding of how memory and recognition actually work. These principles apply to the documentary record too. Photographs and video capture, the identifier features human memory latches onto. By changing key elements, agents disguise themselves from both direct observation and later identification through imagery. Real-world case studies demonstrate this approach's effectiveness. During Cold War operations, Western agents in Moscow sometimes used disguises, colleagues described as hardly disguises at all, yet successfully evaded KGB surveillance. The key wasn't looking completely different, but changing just enough to avoid triggering recognition while maintaining natural behavior. The foundation of this approach is understanding human perception. We don't see everything with equal attention. Our brains constantly filter information, focusing on what seems important. This creates opportunities for deception by manipulating where attention goes. Intelligence professionals create visual hierarchies in their appearance, wearing something slightly unusual, enough to become the primary thing remembered about them, while keeping actual identifying features unremarkable and forgettable. This strategic attention direction represents sophisticated understanding of cognitive psychology. Beyond simply looking different, it controls what observers remember and forget, manipulating the process of perception itself. Of course, real intelligence agencies combine these principles with rigorous behavioral training. The most perfect minimal disguise fails if the person behaves inconsistently with their appearance. This fundamental difference separates theatrical disguise artists from intelligence professionals. For actors, the goal is transformation, becoming visibly different to an impressed audience. For spies, the goal is effective deception, avoiding recognition while maintaining plausibility. These different objectives lead to radically different techniques, with intelligence work favoring subtlety over spectacle. Behavior. The missing piece. Beyond the quick change techniques and physical transformations lies the element that betrays most undercover operatives. And it's not what you might expect. According to CIA training files, agents spent up to 3 times longer learning behavioral modification than applying physical disguises. This striking imbalance reveals what intelligence agencies have always known. The most sophisticated mask in the world can't save you if your behavior doesn't match your appearance. When you watch spy movies, you'll notice something peculiar. The moment a character puts on their disguise, they instantly embody their new persona. Jason Bourne applies a simple accent and immediately becomes a perfect Russian officer. Ethan Hunt slides on a mask and magically adopts all the mannerisms, speech patterns, and behavioral quirks of his target without preparation. Hollywood treats behavior like it comes bundled with the costume. Put on the uniform and you automatically know how to act like the person you're impersonating. The reality, this behavioral transformation is where most real-world disguises fall apart. You can change your face, but if you move, speak, or react in ways inconsistent with your cover identity, you might as well be wearing a neon sign announcing, "I'm an imposter." Real intelligence agencies understand this, which is why they've historically dedicated the bulk of their training resources to behavioral aspects of deception rather than cosmetic ones. Think about how we actually recognize people in our daily lives. When you spot a friend across a crowded room, you're recognizing a unique combination of how they walk, how they hold themselves, their characteristic gestures, and dozens of other subtle behavioral cues. This is precisely why intelligence agencies focus so intensely on these elements. A convincing spy must move, react, and exist differently. CIA training programs emphasized mastering behavioral congruence, ensuring that every element of an agent's behavior aligned with their cover identity. This extended to minute details: the way someone distributes their weight when standing, how they hold a cigarette, where they direct their gaze during conversation, or the subtle micro-expressions that flash across their face when surprised. Consider the case of one CIA operative in Eastern Europe during the Cold War. Despite meticulous physical disguise work, his operation was nearly compromised when he instinctively reached for a door with his dominant hand. Contrary to local custom, this split-second behavioral incongruence triggered suspicion in a security officer, requiring quick improvisation to explain away the cultural misstep. Such near misses illustrate why agents spent weeks practicing gait modification, literally learning to walk differently. They studied typical postures of locals, practiced regional gestures, and internalized cultural reaction patterns. Intelligence training manuals emphasize living the cover. This means psychologically inhabiting the fabricated persona to the degree that responses become automatic. Agents would practice identity immersion, spending days or weeks living as their cover persona before an operation, sleeping, eating, and thinking as this alternate self to build the neural pathways necessary for authentic behavior. The psychological toll of this immersion could be significant. Many agents reported moments of identity confusion after prolonged operations, temporarily forgetting aspects of their true selves as they committed so fully to their cover identities. This psychological burden rarely appears in Hollywood portrayals, yet represents one of the most challenging aspects of intelligence work. Studies on human recognition reveal we rely more heavily on behavioral patterns than facial features when identifying individuals in dynamic situations. Our brains are wired to detect incongruence when someone's appearance and behavior don't align. It triggers instant suspicion, often subconsciously before we've consciously registered what feels off. This behavioral focus explains why the CIA could sometimes get away with minimal physical disguises. If behavior was perfectly calibrated, observers would accept minor inconsistencies in appearance. Conversely, even the most perfect physical disguise would crumble under behavioral inconsistency. Former CIA Chief of Disguise, Jana Mendez, had surprising advice for her agents. Own it. According to Mendez, your demeanor is just as important as your disguise. Stride into any room with confidence and inhabit the character completely. This psychological ownership creates a powerful effect. When you truly believe in your cover identity, others around you are dramatically more likely to accept it without question. Intelligence agencies discovered that confident behavior prevents observers from questioning inconsistencies they might otherwise notice. People rarely challenge someone who acts as if they belong, whether they're pretending to be a janitor or a foreign diplomat. This emphasis on behavior creates a fascinating paradox. Agents must simultaneously maintain heightened self-awareness while appearing natural. They need to consciously control dozens of behavioral elements most of us perform unconsciously, all while seeming relaxed and authentic. Intelligence training addressed this through behavioral chunking, breaking down complex behaviors into smaller components that could be mastered individually before being reassembled. For example, an agent preparing for deployment in a specific region might spend weeks just mastering the characteristic way locals hold cigarettes or handle eating utensils, then gradually integrate these elements into a complete behavioral package. Maintaining consistency under stress proved especially challenging. When adrenaline spikes, most people default to ingrained patterns. Intelligence agencies developed specialized stress inoculation training, including simulated interrogations and surprise encounters conducted while in character, forcing agents to maintain their behavioral facade under extreme conditions. The CIA's approach included understanding the psychological principles of perception, how attention works, where observers focus, and exploiting natural cognitive biases. This psychological dimension elevated disguise work from simple cosmetic deception to sophisticated social engineering. What's most striking is how dramatically this behavioral focus differs from Hollywood's portrayal. Movies emphasize dramatic physical transformation while ignoring the vastly more complex behavioral components. Real intelligence experts consider this Hollywood's biggest mistake, creating the illusion that identity deception is primarily about appearance when behavior is actually the make or break factor. The psychology of identity. The difference between actors and spies extends far beyond their approach to physical disguise. It's fundamentally about how they manage identity itself. When method actors talk about becoming the character, they're describing a temporary state, but for intelligence operatives, the psychological burden of living a lie creates unique mental challenges that have forced intelligence agencies to develop specialized psychological training just to keep their agents sane. Former CIA operatives call this phenomenon identity strain. Real intelligence work places enormous psychological demands on agents that Hollywood portrayals rarely capture. Living under a false identity requires sustaining a psychological facade that gradually erodes an agent's sense of self. The CIA recognizes this considerable psychological toll, a significant mental burden leading to substantial stress. Agents can't simply compartmentalize their cover identity as a separate task. They must live it, sometimes for years at a time. Cover absorption represents one of the most insidious psychological challenges, occurring when agents begin to internalize elements of their false identity. Consider the case of a CIA operative who spent 3 years posing as a passionate supporter of an extremist political faction. During debriefing, he confessed to his handlers that he began having dreams where he genuinely believed in the cause. "I would wake up confused about which thoughts were mine and which belonged to my cover," he reported. "It was like watching parts of my real self slowly dissolve." This psychological pressure can compromise operations more effectively than any physical disguise failure. When an agent's mind fractures under the stress of maintaining multiple identities, they might respond to their real name in public, reference personal experiences contradicting their cover story, or exhibit behavioral inconsistencies that alert counterintelligence services. To counter these risks, intelligence agencies develop sophisticated screening techniques to identify individuals with high psychological resilience. The ideal candidates possess a flexible but stable psychological profile, with strong core identity structures that withstand the pressure of temporarily adopting false personas. Even the most mentally resilient agents require ongoing support and training to manage these unique stresses. The CIA has developed specific techniques to help agents maintain psychological equilibrium. While operating undercover, psychological anchoring represents one crucial strategy. Agents establish private rituals or thought patterns that reconnect them with their authentic identity. These anchors might be a particular phrase they repeat to themselves, a personal object carried discreetly, or scheduled moments of true self-reflection when secure. Regular identity reinforcement exercises complement these anchoring techniques. During secure debriefings, agents review their actual life histories, personal values, and relationships. These sessions serve as psychological maintenance, preventing the false identity from consuming the agent's authentic self. Regular psychological tune-ups ensuring the mind doesn't accept the cover story as reality. The CIA emphasizes a mission mindset over simple self-discipline. Rather than merely instructing agents to stay in character, the agency cultivates a practical approach focused on achieving specific outcomes. This mindset prioritizes results over personal comfort, allowing agents to make difficult choices without becoming paralyzed by ethical dilemmas or identity confusion. The agency fosters this mindset through experiential learning. Rather than theoretical instruction, concepts are immediately applied in practical scenarios, reinforcing adaptability and pragmatism. This approach helps agents develop cognitive flexibility, the ability to shift perspective while maintaining core psychological stability. Jana Mendez, former CIA chief of disguise, explains how this training manifests in practice. When you're deep undercover, your true self becomes like a distant memory. You need something to hold on to that reminds you who you really are when everything else feels foreign. This insight captures the emotional reality of operatives who must maintain their internal compass while externally becoming someone else entirely. Part of this training involves physically separating agents from their normal environments, facilitating a perspective shift that enables them to see through the eyes of their cover identity. This separation creates space for adopting the ethically flexible approach required in intelligence work. The psychological training emphasizes first-mover advantage, taking initiative to control situations rather than merely reacting. Agents proactively establish interaction parameters, steer conversations away from dangerous topics, and create circumstances reinforcing their false persona. CIA officers also learn to recognize threat responses in others, understanding that lying often stems from feeling threatened. This awareness works both ways. Agents detect when someone might be lying to them while gaining insight into how their own psychological tells might betray them when their cover identity feels threatened. This psychological burden intensifies with experience. Veteran agents who cycle through multiple cover identities report disturbing moments of identity confusion, questioning which version is real. As one former intelligence officer described, after years of becoming different people, you start to wonder if there's a core you underneath all the layers. Intelligence agencies invest heavily in post-operation mental health support. Debriefing helps agents psychologically reintegrate into their authentic identities. Specialized psychologists understand the unique stresses of cover work and help agents process these experiences. What makes this particularly challenging is that agents can't discuss their experiences with friends or family. They must process this psychological burden alone or with limited colleague support, creating additional psychological pressure. The clearest evidence of how seriously intelligence agencies take this psychological dimension comes from their training programs. While technical skills receive significant attention, psychological resilience training forms the backbone of preparation. The focus on maintaining mental fortitude underscores that the mind is a crucial tool in espionage, and a weakened mind can be more dangerous than any physical disguise failure. The social engineering dimension. Those psychological tools aren't just internal safeguards. They're the foundation for what intelligence professionals consider the true art of disguise. Social engineering. While Hollywood obsesses over latex masks and voice changers, the intelligence community recognizes that disguise is fundamentally about manipulating social perception. The question isn't whether someone can recognize your face, but whether they'll question your presence or purpose in the first place. Social engineering represents the sophisticated intersection between psychology and deception in intelligence work. It involves the deliberate manipulation of social dynamics to achieve operational goals. In disguise operations, this means controlling how others perceive, categorize, and interact with you, often without them realizing they're being influenced. This dimension's power comes from leveraging innate human psychological tendencies. We all make rapid, unconscious judgments about people based on limited information. These snap assessments determine how much scrutiny we apply to someone and whether we question their presence. Intelligence agencies systematically exploit these natural tendencies. Intelligence professionals employ several key techniques that work together, like a chameleon's ability to blend seamlessly into its environment. Status shifting involves temporarily adopting the mannerisms, language patterns, and behavioral cues of a different social class or position. A field agent might downshift to more casual speech patterns when infiltrating a working-class environment, or upshift by projecting authority to gain access to restricted locations. These status shifts fundamentally alter how others interact with the agent. People naturally defer to those they perceive as having higher status, often providing information without questioning credentials. Alternatively, those perceived as having lower status frequently become socially invisible, allowing observation without scrutiny. Attention direction involves strategically drawing attention toward or away from certain aspects of appearance or behavior. Agents create deliberate distractions, a distinctive accessory, a slight accent, or an unusual mannerism that observers will focus on and remember. Meanwhile, actual identifying characteristics fade into the background of memory. This exploits how human memory works. When recalling an encounter, most people can only remember a handful of details. By controlling which details stand out, agents ensure witnesses remember the crafted distractions rather than identifying features. Social camouflage represents the art of blending seamlessly into an environment by adopting its unwritten rules and behavioral norms. This extends beyond appropriate dress to understanding subtle social cues, conversational patterns, and interpersonal dynamics. When executed properly, social camouflage makes someone appear to belong so completely that they become effectively invisible. Intelligence agencies invest considerable resources training agents to analyze and adapt to new social environments. This includes identifying informal hierarchies, communication patterns, and behavioral expectations. An agent who emulates these norms can operate with remarkable freedom, as people naturally assume someone who behaves correctly must belong. These techniques exploit cognitive biases, mental shortcuts our brains use to process information. Intelligence professionals trigger the halo effect, where positive impressions in one area lead observers to make positive assumptions about unrelated characteristics. They exploit confirmation bias by presenting cues that align with what observers expect to see in a particular context. When people encounter someone who fits their mental model of who should be in a certain place, they rarely question that person's presence, even if other aspects don't quite add up. The integration of these social engineering techniques with physical disguise creates something far more sophisticated than Hollywood portrays. While movies focus on changing appearance, intelligence agencies focus on changing how others perceive and interact with their operatives. The physical elements merely support the psychological manipulation. Former CIA Chief of Disguise, Jonna Mendez, consistently emphasized the paramount importance of confidence in field operations. An agent must psychologically own their disguise, projecting absolute certainty in their alternate persona. This confident behavior prevents others from questioning inconsistencies they might otherwise notice. The psychological principle at work is fascinating. Humans are remarkably poor at challenging someone who acts with complete confidence. We instinctively avoid social confrontation and tend to rationalize inconsistencies rather than call them out. An agent who behaves as though they unquestionably belong creates a powerful barrier against scrutiny. This dimension becomes particularly critical in high-stakes environments where traditional physical disguises might be limited by practical constraints. In many scenarios, agents don't have the luxury of elaborate makeup or prosthetics. They must rely primarily on behavioral techniques to achieve their objectives. Consider an intelligence officer needing to extract information from a secured facility with minimal preparation time. Their success depends not on dramatic physical transformation, but on manipulating social dynamics to gain cooperation or avoid suspicion. By projecting the right combination of authority, confidence, and familiarity with protocols, they can often move through restricted areas unchallenged. These techniques' value lies in their adaptability across different contexts and cultures. While physical disguise must be tailored to specific environments, the fundamental principles of social engineering remain consistent. Whether in corporate boardrooms or crowded marketplaces, the ability to control social perception gives agents a universal tool for deception. The real-world effectiveness of these approaches contrasts with Hollywood's portrayal. While films focus on visual transformation, intelligence agencies understand that powerful deception happens not in what others see, but in how they interpret it. A masterful agent doesn't need to look completely different. They need to control the narrative that observers create about who they are and why they're there. This explains why intelligence training emphasizes understanding human psychology and social dynamics. The psychological foundation proves far more valuable in the field than technical disguise skills alone. The evolution of deception. While psychological principles remain constant, the physical tools of deception have undergone a fascinating evolution that Hollywood completely misses. During World War II, disguise wasn't just about fancy gadgets. It was literally a matter of life and death. Spies operating behind enemy lines relied on transforming their appearances to blend seamlessly into hostile environments, gathering critical intelligence while avoiding detection that would lead to certain execution. WW2 Disguise Fundamentals. These WWW operatives employed sophisticated techniques to alter their physical appearance. They methodically changed hair color, style, and length while using makeup and prosthetics to modify facial features. The effectiveness of their disguises extended beyond surface changes. Agents carefully studied and replicated the subtle posture, gait, and mannerisms of locals, recognizing that human movement patterns are as identifiable as facial features. WW2 spies constructed entirely new identities, complete with false names, detailed backstories, and fabricated occupations. Every element of their cover was meticulously crafted to withstand intense scrutiny. Their clothing and accessories served as props, reinforcing their cover story, whether wearing appropriate uniforms or carrying personal items that validated their claimed background. Wartime agents carried specialized disguise kits containing tools for quick transformations, makeup, wigs, prosthetic devices, and contact lenses. Each kit was custom designed for specific mission parameters and regional requirements. Perhaps most critically, agents mastered local accents and dialects, a skill that no physical disguise could compensate for if absent. Cold War innovations. As we moved into the Cold War, the fundamentals remained unchanged, but technology opened new possibilities. The CIA formed an unlikely partnership that perfectly illustrates this evolution. They collaborated with Hollywood makeup artist John Chambers, the genius behind the groundbreaking prosthetics in Planet of the Apes, to create a revolutionary generation of face masks. These masks could be applied and removed quickly, allowed for natural facial movement, and appeared remarkably lifelike under scrutiny. The Cold War brought heightened stakes in urban environments where constant surveillance made traditional disguise techniques more challenging. Jana Mendez, who served as the CIA's chief of disguise, emphasized an enduring principle from WWA that remained paramount through this era: the importance of being gray, visually unremarkable in any setting. This concept of social blending transcended specific disguise techniques, proving that some psychological foundations of deception remain timeless despite technological advancement. Digital age challenges. The digital age has transformed the landscape dramatically. Modern surveillance technology, especially facial recognition and digital monitoring, has created challenges unimaginable to WW operatives. The CIA has responded by shifting significant focus from physical disguise to digital identity management. The modern spy must be as concerned with their digital footprint as their physical appearance, a concept Hollywood spy films have barely begun to address. Today's facial recognition systems present a formidable challenge to traditional disguise techniques. These systems analyze thousands of facial points, creating mathematical representations of faces that are extremely difficult to fool with conventional masks or makeup. The battle between disguise and detection has escalated into a high-tech arms race, with intelligence agencies constantly developing new countermeasures against increasingly sophisticated identification technologies. An unexpected development in this technological chess match comes from surgical masks. Research demonstrates that these simple face coverings significantly impair facial recognition, both for humans and AI systems. When the lower portion of the face is obscured during either initial viewing or later identification attempts, recognition accuracy plummets dramatically. This has profound implications for security contexts where facial identification is critical. Studies show that when witnesses encounter someone wearing a surgical mask and later try to identify them in a lineup, whether that lineup shows masked or unmasked individuals, their accuracy suffers considerably. This challenges assumptions about how disguises work and suggests that even partial face coverings create substantial recognition barriers. This creates complications for law enforcement. When criminals use face coverings during crimes, subsequent identification becomes significantly more challenging, regardless of whether witnesses view masked or unmasked lineups later. The masks undermine both the witnesses' ability to discriminate between faces and the reliability of their confidence in their identifications. The arms race extends to artificial intelligence as well. Deep convolutional neural networks, DCNNs, the current state-of-the-art in facial recognition, demonstrate remarkable strengths and exploitable weaknesses. These systems achieve near-perfect accuracy with unobscured faces, but struggle dramatically with disguised ones. In testing scenarios where subjects attempted to evade recognition while maintaining their own identity, DCNNs performed no better than random chance, a vulnerability shared with human observers. Research shows that averaging multiple images, creating a composite representation of a person, can increase DCNN recognition accuracy for disguised faces from chance levels to. However, this improvement brings a trade-off: decreased ability to distinguish between different people who look similar. This mirrors the fundamental challenge in all disguise countermeasures, balancing detection accuracy against false positive errors. Circular evolution. Despite technological developments, we're witnessing a circular evolution where effective modern techniques harken back to WWA principles. The psychological foundations of disguise haven't changed much in 80 years. What worked in occupied Paris still works in modern surveillance states. The ability to blend into surroundings, manage others' expectations, and project confidence that discourages scrutiny. The difference lies in application. Where WW agents used analog techniques against human observers, today's operatives employ digital countermeasures against algorithmic systems. The tools have evolved dramatically, but the core objective remains unchanged: manipulating perception to create a plausible alternative reality. This evolution reveals something profound about deception itself. While technology constantly advances, human psychology remains remarkably stable. Our perceptual systems, the way we recognize faces, interpret behavior, and assess credibility, follow patterns that have remained consistent through generations. This explains why certain deception principles transcend technological digital disguise remaining effective. The timeless principles of deception today are now colliding with an unprecedented challenge. What happens when your opponent isn't human at all? Modern facial recognition analyzes thousands of invisible data points, using sophisticated algorithms that can identify individuals even in crowded environments or from partial facial views. These systems don't get tired, distracted, or fooled by psychological tricks that work on humans, creating an entirely new battlefield where most Hollywood spy techniques would fail spectacularly within seconds. In films, we see agents slipping on impossibly perfect masks that fool even the most advanced security systems. The spy walks confidently past scanners, and the computer flashes access, granted without hesitation. It's a compelling fantasy, but about as realistic as teleportation. The reality of countering today's AI-powered surveillance requires approaches that would seem alien to both WWO's spies and Hollywood directors. Let's start with a fundamental truth. AI doesn't see faces the way humans do. When you look at someone, you process their face holistically. The overall impression matters most, but facial recognition algorithms break faces down into mathematical relationships between features, analyzing everything from the distance between your eyes to the unique vascular patterns beneath your skin. This fundamental difference is why disguises that fool humans often fail completely against machines. How do these systems actually work? And where are their weaknesses? According to research, facial recognition technology struggles significantly when faces are partially obscured. A study by Mansour found that combining a toque, a close-fitting knit cap, and sunglasses dramatically reduced correct identifications. Even more telling, covering 2/3 of the face with a stocking was just as effective as covering it entirely, suggesting that disrupting the global facial configuration matters more than hiding specific features. This vulnerability has given rise to specialized techniques, specifically designed to counter biometric surveillance. CV Dazzle employs strategic makeup patterns and hairstyles not to make you look like someone else, but to confuse the algorithms themselves. The geometric black and white patterns disrupt the mathematical relationships these systems try to measure, making the face essentially invisible to recognition software. But effectiveness varies widely. A study by Noyes and Jenkins found that deep convolutional neural networks, the computer systems that power modern face recognition, achieve perfect accuracy with undisguised faces, yet perform at mere chance levels when confronted with certain evasion techniques. In simpler terms, the same technology that never misses a normal face can become completely blind when faced with the right countermeasures. The COVID-19 pandemic created a natural experiment in facial recognition limitations. Research by Orr and colleagues revealed that surgical masks significantly impair identification accuracy. Interestingly, when witnesses encounter someone wearing a mask, presenting an unmasked lineup later can be just as effective as a masked one, though confidence in identifications drops considerably when masks are involved. This new landscape has forced intelligence agencies to dramatically shift their approach. Rather than focusing primarily on physical appearance modification, they've expanded into comprehensive digital identity management. This means creating and maintaining false online personas, using encrypted communication channels, and employing techniques to obscure digital footprints. The goal is to blend seamlessly into the digital environment where surveillance now extends. Security researchers emphasize that biometric systems are designed to match patterns, not understand context. This creates exploitable weaknesses. Infrared blocking materials can disrupt systems that rely on thermal imaging or depth perception. Specialized fabrics and films can absorb or reflect light in ways that confuse cameras without appearing unusual to human observers. These countermeasures exploit the technical limitations of the systems themselves rather than creating perfect visual disguises. What about documented cases where facial recognition has been successfully deceived? They rarely resemble anything from Hollywood. In controlled tests, researchers have fooled systems using specialized printed patterns worn around the neck, carefully designed glasses frames with infrared LEDs, and textured masks with distortion patterns that look nothing like realistic faces. These approaches work because they target the mathematical models underlying the recognition process. Intelligence agencies now approach disguise as a multi-domain problem. Physical appearance is just one element in a comprehensive approach that includes managing digital signatures, understanding algorithmic vulnerabilities, and creating technological countermeasures. So what techniques actually work against today's surveillance systems? Effective countermeasures often involve disrupting facial geometry rather than concealing it, using materials that interfere with infrared or 3D scanning. 3. Creating visual patterns specifically designed to confuse algorithm-based recognition. 4. Combining physical techniques with digital identity management. 5. Employing specialized makeup patterns that target the specific metrics used by recognition systems. These approaches share little with Hollywood's vision of perfect facial masks. In fact, the most effective techniques often look deliberately artificial, designed to exploit the gap between human and machine perception. What's particularly fascinating is how the relationship between physical appearance and behavior has evolved in this new landscape. While behavior remains crucial when dealing with human observers, machines require different countermeasures entirely. An agent might employ one set of techniques when passing human security and a completely different approach when facing automated systems. The expert consensus on defeating modern biometric systems with physical disguises is mixed at best. While specialized countermeasures can be effective in specific scenarios, the rapidly evolving nature of these systems means that methods that work today may fail tomorrow. This has created a perpetual cat-and-mouse game between surveillance technologies and countermeasure development, one where traditional disguise concepts offer diminishing returns. The unbelievable reality. While our perpetual cat-and-mouse game between surveillance technologies and countermeasures continues to evolve, there's something even more fascinating about real-world disguise operations that Hollywood consistently misses. The declassified files of genuine intelligence operations reveal tactics so audacious and unconventional that movie scriptwriters would reject them as too unrealistic for audiences to believe. The intelligence community has long understood something that filmmakers often overlook. Sometimes the most effective deception isn't about changing faces at all. Former CIA Chief of Disguise John Mendez emphasized, "We could change your ethnicity, we could change your gender, we could make you whatever you needed to be around the group that you were targeting, and you still could be safe." Yet the agency's most impressive disguises weren't always worn by people. This principle reached its most impressive expression in what might be the most audacious disguise operation in intelligence history, one so bold that Hollywood would never dare include it. I'm talking about the recovery of a Soviet submarine using Howard Hughes' Glomar Explorer. The most striking aspect of real intelligence work was how often agencies employed the too obvious to be suspicious principle. This counterintuitive approach involved creating a cover story so public, so visible, and so seemingly legitimate that no one questioned it, even when hiding something extraordinary in plain sight. Real intelligence work often focused on concealing the true nature of activities and objects rather than transforming appearances. Operations like Waspish and the Moscow Identical Twin Mission demonstrated how agencies prioritized operational security, ensuring the mission itself remained hidden from adversaries. Instead of asking, "How do we make this person look different?" intelligence officers asked, "How do we make this operation invisible?" The answer involved creating cover stories and disguising equipment that would withstand professional counterintelligence scrutiny. The agency created an entire fake corporate structure. They installed public-facing executives. They published technical reports about mining potential. Press releases touted the venture's commercial prospects. Every detail reinforced the deception. In 1974, the CIA undertook an operation to salvage a sunken Soviet submarine from the Pacific Ocean floor. The submarine lay 3 miles deep in international waters. The technical challenges alone were staggering, but the disguise for this massive intelligence operation proved even more remarkable. A global commercial mining venture, supposedly backed by eccentric billionaire Howard Hughes, the CIA constructed an elaborate cover story, claiming Hughes was pioneering deep-sea mining of manganese nodules. They built the massive Glomar Explorer, a 6-ton 19-foot vessel specifically designed for the recovery operation. While appearing to be a mining ship, engineers crafted specialized equipment that served dual purposes. Massive claws designed to grab the submarine looked identical to mining equipment. The ship's distinctive moon pool, a huge opening in the center, appeared perfect for bringing up ocean floor samples. This operational philosophy, hiding in plain sight through an elaborate but believable cover story, demonstrates sophisticated understanding of human psychology and perception management beyond Hollywood portrayals. It creates a comprehensive narrative answering questions before they're even asked. The brilliance lay in its transparency. Rather than hiding the ship or operating covertly, the CIA placed the operation directly in the public eye. They leveraged Howard Hughes' well-known eccentricity and wealth to create a plausible explanation for this seemingly bizarre commercial venture. Who else but Hughes would invest enormous sums in unproven deep-sea mining technology? Major newspapers and trade publications reported on the story, creating a paper trail of legitimacy that deflected suspicion. This wasn't a disguised agent or a fake passport. This was industrial-scale deception operating on the global stage. The operation required disguising the true purpose of the ship, its specialized equipment, and a crew exceeding 160 people. Everything from the vessel's visible external features to its internal compartments maintained the mining deception while concealing the true recovery mission. The operation ultimately recovered a portion of the Soviet submarine before mechanical failures prevented complete success. Yet even this partial success represents an astonishing achievement in operational deception. When the Glomar Explorer finally reached its target location in the Pacific, crew members worked around the clock. Giant mechanical claws slowly descended through 3 miles of ocean. The tension aboard the ship was palpable. Would Soviet vessels interrupt the operation? Would the equipment function at such extreme depths? Could they actually lift a 2,000-ton submarine off the ocean floor without anyone realizing what they were doing? The operation's scale makes it particularly remarkable. Most intelligence deceptions involve individual agents or small teams. This required coordinating hundreds of people, many unaware they participated in an intelligence operation. It demanded creating actual functioning technology, supporting the cover story, while secretly serving the true mission. The deception maintained over an extended period, not just a brief operational window. The principles behind these operations remain relevant even as technology evolves. While AI-powered surveillance systems now challenge traditional physical disguises, the psychological principles of effective deception endure, creating compelling cover stories. Managing attention and hiding in plain sight remain powerful tools in the intelligence arsenal. This approach to disguise, focusing on creating believable cover for activities rather than individuals, reflects a fundamental principle of intelligence work rarely captured in films. Real operational deception considers not just how a person looks, but how an entire scenario presents itself to observers. It understands what questions observers will ask and preemptively provides convincing answers. So what have we learned about the real art of disguise? As Jana Mendez, former CIA chief of disguise, emphasized throughout her career, it's about owning your disguise psychologically. While Hollywood focuses on dramatic physical transformations, real intelligence work reveals that confidence and behavior are the true foundation of deception. The psychology behind successful disguise makes intelligence tradecraft fascinating. Strategic adjustments redirect attention while maintaining natural behavior. When you next watch a spy film, remember that reality surpasses fiction. The true mastery lies in understanding human perception and exploiting it with minimal changes. As Mendez often said, the best disguise is the one nobody notices.
Codes a twisted maze, risk it all to crack this case. Blazing lights disguise the truth, undercover stealing proof. Glamour's glitter can't unglue Hollywood spy. It's what I do. The phone decoding schemes, truth not